Hello, welcome to another book review. This time we're going to be talking about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. The hegemonic consul sat on the balcony of his ebony spaceship and played Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor on an ancient but well-maintained steinway, while great green saurian things surged and bellowed in the swamps below. A thunderstorm was brewing to the north. Bruised black clouds silhouetted a forest of giant gymnosperms, while stratocumulus towered 9 kilometers high in a violent sky. Lightning rippled along the horizon. Closer to the ship, occasional vague reptilian shapes would blunder into the interdiction field, cry out, and then crash away through indigo mists. The consul concentrated on a difficult section of the prelude and ignored the approach of the storm and nightfall. So a bit about the author. Dan Simmons was a teacher, still is alive, but he was a teacher. And he wrote all sorts of books, horror, sci-fi, fantasy kind of stuff. This was his kind of big, acclaimed breakthrough book, Hyperion. It's part of the Hyperion Cantos, which is 2 books, and then he did some other books afterwards, I think about the same universe, but the Cantos itself is the 2 books. Silenus, the poet in the book, he's also written something called the Hyperion Cantos, so it kind of references that by calling it that. And yeah, this is the first of the 2 books in the series, called Hyperion. So to summarise the book, it's about 7 pilgrims who go to Hyperion, and they all have their own reasons for going that are kind of mysterious, and they tell us through the form of stories throughout the pilgrimage. It's loosely based on Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, in the sense that they're all kind of telling each other their stories of how they got there and their histories and how it's led to why they're there today. And I think it's a really fun, unique structure of a book, really interesting. Yeah, and it's also called Hyperion, which is the name of John Keats' poem. John Keats is a poet who's mentioned a lot in the novel, and I think Simmons is a big fan of him or something, because he loves quoting him a lot in the book. And I don't really understand the parallel, the link to it, because I haven't probably done enough research, but it's really nice. It's really nice, I think, to base it on something grounded in history. I really liked reading this book. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I thought it was really creative and new and original. And it's one of those things where it's not super creative, that it's too avant-garde, but it's creative in a way that it's just different and interesting, and I don't know, kind of an easier way to read a book, especially when you see this kind of thick book. You think, oh, that's going to take me ages to get through, but because it's kind of like little short stories within one big book, it's a lot easier to get your head around. I thought that although the plot itself of the main book isn't as strong, I can see why it's not, because this book is mostly about the pilgrims telling their stories, and you get some really fantastic stories. And then the second book's more kind of following on from this book, so you probably get more of what happens next in the real world instead of looking back at their histories. Yeah, there's 7 main characters and 7 pilgrims who tell their stories. Some are more interesting than others, of course. The first story is, for me, my favourite story. It's the priest's tale, and he's telling about a fellow priest who travelled to Hyperion and went to one of the little known tribes and lived with them and experienced their life, and yeah, it was super interesting and quite, I don't know, eerie and creepy and dark, and I really liked it, and that's what really hooked me onto the book. As the book went on, there was a couple stories that did lull for me. That being said, like, even through all the stories, you can see how they've kind of, other things have been inspired by them. Maybe not directly, but it definitely was like a precursor to a lot of things you see today. Like, some of the stories reminded me of like Black Mirror episodes, and I thought, oh, I can see this in a Black Mirror episode, or I have seen it in a Black Mirror episode. Feidman Kassad's story reminded me of a Black Mirror episode where like they meet in a game, or even like, I don't know, Ready Player One or something, where like they meet in a game and then he finds out what she looks like in real life, kind of thing. The one with like the daughter aging backwards, Weintraub's one, as I say, it kind of got repetitive and a bit boring, but it was also kind of ahead of its time. It reminded me of like Arrival, that one. Even the ending story with the console, about like the two lovers who were kind of on different planets and different time zones. It was very like Time Traveler's Wife kind of thing, or you know, that kind of cliche of meeting someone at different parts of their life at different times of their life and you stay the same age. So I thought it was, yeah, like really ahead of its time in some ways. And yeah, a lot of the stories were very, even if I didn't like them, it was one of those things like I can see why someone would like it and maybe prefer it to some of the other ones. And then we also have The Poet's Tale. The Poet's Tale is also interesting. And I think Poet's Tale especially, you can tell how much Simmons has tried to kind of experiment in how he tells the story. He really tries to write a different character and make him a bit more quirky and rambunctious and annoying and arrogant. And also in that story, I don't know, yeah, he kind of makes it a bit more poetic. I think some stories he writes it is cool to see him write in different ways. I mean, there's like a general like writing style and voice he has throughout the novel, but that being said, like, yeah, you can really see he's trying with the different stories to speak with a different voice almost. Another thing that I really enjoyed about the novel is this kind of mysterious character of the Shrike and the time tunes and the world of Hyperion itself. You're kind of fed dribs and drabs about what the Shrike is, what the Shrike can do, how devastating he is, and it kind of builds this mythos and legend, almost like I don't know, like some kind of like devil figure. And as you read more in the book, you kind of realise what he's about. And by the last story with the console story, I think he says something like the Shrike is actually, and the time tombs are from the future, and they're there to kind of like if it goes, something I can't remember now, but something like if AI goes too far or something, it's there to kind of pull it in and rein it in. But yeah, it's like, even when you have that explanation, it's still a bit of a mysterious figure and has mysterious motivations. You don't really know what he wants. He's just randomly killing people, and yeah, in an arbitrarily seeming way. But it's cool. It's kind of like this agent of chaos in this world of order. I think it's a nice antagonist, kind of almost Tolkien-like, with the Shrike being this ultimate evil kind of figure. And I think by the last story, the console story, you do get a more well-rounded understanding of the rest of the tales and the rest of the history and the mythos that's been built. And yeah, it all ties together really nicely, and it does make you kind of think quite philosophically about some things and consider what the future has in store for humanity and what happens if we treat people certain ways, if we do certain things to certain cultures and countries and etc. Also, I think underratedly, Simmons' writing style is really nice. I don't know why, but sometimes when I read a sci-fi or fantasy book, I don't really expect like top tier writing or anything, but he describes things really beautifully, and you can really like imagine yourself in Hyperion or in these worlds. And I think it's sometimes with sci-fi, it's a tricky job to kind of know how much to say and how much to hold back, and Simmons does a really good job of knowing exactly how much to say without overwhelming the reader, but also not treating the reader stupidly or, you know, holding their hand through too much or over-explaining things, which I hate when I read like a sci-fi fantasy book. So yeah, he does a really good job of finding that balance. Yeah, I think generally Simmons' world building is like some of the best I've read. And And it's weird because I want to say like in such a short amount of time, but it's not. It's like, well, almost 600 pages, 500 pages, something. But it's like he's built this massive like galaxy, and you still understand what he's talking about generally, even if you don't understand the specifics of particulars. You still get such a good feeling of this world and the people in it and the different, I don't know, levels of society. And yeah, he does such a good job at describing that. I think for me, as someone who does read mostly classics, I don't know, sometimes the only thing I would say about this book is sometimes when you read like quotes or like, I don't know, references to other books or novels or works, I don't know, sometimes it's a bit cringe, like like when he puts Shakespeare quotes in randomly, it's like, okay, you didn't need to do that. And it just reads as a bit like you're trying to look smart, if you know what I mean. And this, you know, there's other times where he does that and it does flow really naturally, and like some of the key parts obviously flow really well. I've also seen criticisms about like Braun Lamia, or I don't know if I'm just as bad. I don't think I mentioned her story, but yeah, Braun Lamia's story, she basically meets Keats as like a clone version. Yeah, again, I didn't really like that story, which is a shame because I quite like noir kind of stuff like that, but it was a bit boring for me and maybe a bit cliche. But yeah, I saw some criticism saying like, oh, the only female in it's there to be pregnant or something. But I don't think that's very valid because she does have like a good, I don't know, I think her character is written fine for the most part throughout the book. And yeah, some parts in her own story, it's a bit like of course she has to fight like loads of guys naked. Of course, that's such a sci-fi thing to do, but no female character is going to be written perfectly. But that being said, I think she was like fine, and I don't think any criticisms towards that are super necessary. So all in all, that's my Hyperion review. As you can see, it's gone from day to night again. Somehow I always managed to do these in like that nook of time between day and night. I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope that you also enjoyed Hyperion. If you did, let me know. If you didn't, also let me know. I want to make more videos on here, so it would be nice to know what kind of books people like, or any recommendations of what books to read next or review next. I also hope you have a wonderful new year, and please, yeah, leave a comment, like or subscribe if you enjoyed this video, to know that you want me to make more of these. Thank you. Bye.